I talk a lot about entrepreneurship with an authentically Catholic lens on this podcast. And today I want to provide a habit that I believe a Catholic entrepreneur should practice daily. That is what we are digging into in the Possibility Mom Live. So I read a lot of books around habits, high performance. You've heard me talk lots on this podcast about what is necessary for people to succeed. What kinds of activities, actions, routines, habits are necessary for the outcomes that you desire. And in my newest course, the Business Buffet is sort of a precursor to my signature group coaching experience, Wealth Without Guilt for Catholic Moms. But inside the Business Buffet, I've been working on a resource that I have been sort of dreaming about for a long time and never really found. I would look online for this type of resource, and everything I found was just too woo woo and too, I don't know, like flowery and not specific enough. And so I decided to create my own resource that is totally Catholic in its nature. And I believe that if you do this habit every day, and in fact, I'm going to test it and I'm going to have my students test it. So, at time of recording, this is a brand new resource that I'm revealing to you today. I'm going to have my students test it and I'm going to share with you the outcome at the end. I think I'll get like 30, give it a 30-day type thing and get people to really notice the difference. And so what this daily habit is a manifesto. Now, you might hear this word and be like, ooh, manifesto. That's like manifesting. That sounds wrong and bad. The way that I am, and I would be curious about the etymology of the word manifesto. So let's look that up later on. But the way that I am using this this resource, what I'm hoping this resource does is grounds you in reality. I want people to get in the habit of grounding themselves in reality and not using it as a tool, yes, for inspiration, but for a reminder of who they really are. Because what I see both in myself big time and in the clients I coach is we can fall to despair, we can fall to hopelessness, we can fall to a depressed feeling when we forget who we are. And when I get coached, that's like really a big part of coaching for me is the coach reflecting back. Is this really reality? And do you remember who you are? All of this was sort of triggered. I've always wanted to develop this kind of a resource, a manifesto, like a something that someone could read and declare every single day to help them get hyped up. And as part of my Business Buffet, my brand new course that gives you the basics of online entrepreneurship, I was like, okay, let's find something. There's got to be somebody got to have created some kind of a business manifesto that is meant to do exactly what I'm trying to say here, which is like get inspired. But everything I found was just too like flaky, if I'm just being honest. It was just too hype. And I realized that's it. I don't want the hype without the grounding in who you really are, because that's where I think the authentic hype, so to speak, comes from. I didn't want to just like read on a piece of paper, you got this, you're amazing. Like, yes, I'm amazing. But why am I amazing? That is where I think we're getting into really interesting territory. And as I share all the time here, I do things as I'm creating them. I create content to help myself process, and this is no different. And so I look forward to reporting back and sharing with you the results of this particular resource, what my students do with this resource, and the results from them. But where this really came out of was a coaching session. So many of you know my dear friends Aaron and Matt Ingold over at Metanoia Catholic. Aaron has coached me for a very long time. I did a coaching session with her husband, Matt. Matt has become a certified Strengths Finder coach. And for those of you who are familiar, this is an incredible resource. It's something I talk about quite a bit here on this podcast. When I took it in 2012 as part of another business coaching experience. That was one of my very first ones, the second formal engagement in business coaching that I ever got into. When I took it, it almost took like sunglasses off. Like it just gave me such a different perspective on myself. Things that I thought were negative about me, I was like, oh, wait a minute, these are actually all strengths. And just this whole unpacking of who you are and that you are unique and your strengths are unique and you can leverage them and there's things that you can do when you're aware. All of this really fascinates me. So, Matt just became a certified Gallup Strengths Finder coach. And part of his certification was to coach a bunch of people. And so he offered me a coaching session specifically with strengths coaching in mind. And it was just a fascinating thing because he like read my strengths and he said a statement like that I've used on clients, but for whatever reason, however I was feeling that day, it just like hit home in a totally different way. And he was like, Lisa, you were born to do this. He was like, your strengths scream what you are currently doing right now. And I just like, again, like I said, something about that statement like filled me with so much hope, with so much vigor, with so much energy. And so I kind of took that experience and turned it into how could this be replicatable for other people, perhaps without a coach, where you can be reminded of who you are so that you don't necessarily have to pay a coach to always remind you who you are, although I highly recommend you invest in coaching to be reminded of who you are. How can we do this for ourselves on a daily basis? So I have 5 frameworks or 5 pieces that I think should go into the framework of creating your own manifesto. And this is like being worked out in real time over here. So the finished product is going to be inside of my business buffet course. So if you are interested in the final product, you have to join me inside of business buffet to go through the final product for real. But here are the 5 components of a manifesto. And I want to encourage you, if you're listening to this, create one for yourself. Like take the prompts I'm giving you here and write your own and then post it on Instagram and DM or tag me at Lisa Canning and let me see what you came up with because I think there's opportunity here for someone to customize it for themselves. But I also think there are some specific things that would be helpful for the Catholic entrepreneur to have, in their back pocket and be able to look at every day and be able to also, particularly in the times when they're feeling squirrely and spiraling, as a place to excuse me as a place to come back to a sense of center and grounding. Okay, here are the 5 components of a manifesto for the Catholic entrepreneur. Number 1, ground yourself in your identity and your inherent worth. Our worth is inherent, meaning we are not earning it. Nothing we can do can change it. And this is where I know in myself, I can sometimes, even as I'm talking about it, I'm like, no, I earn my worth. Like, even in myself, I'm like noticing that this is something I need to constantly remind myself of. I think it's only natural, like, and this goes back to childhood, this goes back to different things, obviously, what you were told as a student, but we can naturally associate our worth with our business performance. I think it's only natural. Nobody likes it when their business fails. Nobody likes it when they run a promotion and it doesn't work out. You know what I mean? So I think being able to right off the top remind yourself of your inherent worth and your identity. And so, what are some phrases that someone could include in this section of a manifesto? I am a daughter of the king. My worth is inherent. Nothing I can do will ever change my worthiness. I have worth from the moment I wake up to the moment I close my eyes. Like, I um, do not earn my worth. There are some Bible verses that I think could be very wonderfully put into here. And I apologize. I meant to grab. I had a little list that I made, but I just realized I didn't grab it. And if you're watching this on YouTube, I have an infant on my lap, and so I'm not getting up to go get it because he is happily quiet. But worthiness and grounding yourself in being a daughter of the king, a child of God, and that nothing you could ever do will change the fact that you have worth and that you are loved and that you have purpose and meaning that is completely separate from what you do in your business. So, number one, ground yourself in your identity and your inherent worth. Number two, ground yourself in who you are. In this section, I want to suggest that it could be very helpful, kind of like when Matt was coaching me, to remind yourself of your uniqueness. So, this section, I would put things like my strengths, like I would literally list or create a sentence around Strength Finder strengths. I am an empathetic cheerleader. These are my strengths. Empathy. My second one is strategic. I provide strategic plans for optimal results. My third one is achiever. I can work hard to achieve a lot, and so on and so forth. I think in this section, you can put things like your temperament. I'm personally a sanguine. So write down why that makes you awesome. I am the life of the party. I generate energy and excitement for anything. I can generate excitement for the most mundane tasks. Um, in this one, I would also put things like your spiritual gifts inventory. So, if you're not familiar, the Catherine of Siena Institute has a inventory. There are other assessments you can find online. But for example, my spiritual gifts include hospitality. So I would put something in this section. I provide experiences that make people feel loved. I provide experiences that make people feel safe. I help people not feel alone. So I think this section is very much around your spiritual gifts, your natural temperament, your what am I my anyway, just your natural and spiritual gifts. I think could be really fun to read back and reflect back to you on who you are. The third component to a daily manifesto, something that you are going to read or say out loud, and again ground you in who you are, is ground yourself in your mission. What is it that you are uniquely called by God to do? This can look like, this section could be things like, I am called to help moms make their first $10,000 in business so they can keep their family together at home and lessen financial burden on their spouse and their family. This is where you can put stuff like, I love the Cardinal Newman prayer on, I have a specific, unique mission that no one else has. This is where I think you can put stuff to remind yourself of the unique group of person that you're called to serve. Um, I was just chatting with somebody who might be exploring uh, future financial planning for large Catholic families. Like, you could put in this section the specific people that the Lord has placed on your heart to help, so that you are constantly reminded why you're doing this. I think too often we can look at business with, of course, the thoughts of burden. This webinar didn't work out. This Facebook ad didn't work out. Nobody bought my product. How come, my live went poorly? Nobody showed up. Like, of course, natural that we can look at all these things. My favorite way to get motivated when I experience normal human disappointment is to remember who I'm doing this for and why it's going to help their life. And so, grounding yourself in your unique mission, I think, is very important to remind yourself of daily. The next one that I think is so important to have a daily reminder of as an entrepreneur is grounding yourself in detachment from the outcome. This today in the Magnificat, for those of you who read that resource, it is the Magnificat is I'm talking about the publication, the Magnificat. It is like a small book that puts together some morning prayers and the daily mass readings, evening prayers, and it also throws in different reflections from saints, from contemporary authors. It's really cool. And in today's reflection, Kimberly Hahn wrote something on suffering. And I just was like, this is amazing. We have to remind ourselves that God is always for us. And like I said, I apologize. I had a whole list of different Bible verses for these things. You'll just have to join me in the business buffet to get the full list. But she, in today's Magnificat, listed some amazing quotes from the Bible, like hope never disappoints, that our Father is going to always give us good gifts. That, and forgive me, I don't have them memorized, but just there is countless evidence in scripture about how much our Lord is for us. And so, therefore, even when a webinar tanks, even when something doesn't go the way we want it to go, we are detached from that outcome. And we can view all of these things in the context of God's incredible plan for our sanctity. Something else in here that I would love to include that only recently just like landed on my radar is Zélie Martin, Saint Therese's mom. This is my French coming out. I really like to speak in French because it's so beautiful when spoken like in French, the way that they would have pronounced it. So, but in English, most people say it's Zélie. So Zélie Martin, the mom of Saint Therese, in her letters, she is quoted about how business was a pain. I'm paraphrasing. She did not say pain. What is the word en français? Ennuyeux is annoying, if I'm not mistaken. That's the word for annoying. Ennuyeux. But anyway, she talks about how her business was a pain, but that she was grateful for it because it made her holy. So I think to ground ourselves daily, that we can be detached from the outcome, that we never lose. We either win or we learn, that we don't have to get things perfect. I think phrases in here like, um, uh, I can, like, moving forward is always success, like things like that I think would be so helpful, because it is just inevitable that in business there are going to be things that do not go according to plan, or something even in the past that worked really successfully may not repeat itself. So that is so crucially important. And the final section of a manifesto, something that I think a Catholic entrepreneur should do every single day, is ground yourself in who you work for. You may have heard me tell this story here on this podcast, but my spiritual director, probably about a year ago now, if I'd have to go back and look at the episodes, but not in the far distant history, in one of our spiritual direction sessions, was like, Lisa, who do you work for? And I remember I kept telling him, I was like, I work for myself. No, no, no. Who do you work for? And then I was like, okay, he's clearly not understanding entrepreneurship. I was like, Father Damien, I don't have an employer. I like work for myself. Like, I don't get what you're getting about this. And he literally was like, you work for God. And I just remember feeling so like, I don't know, like free and inspired when I heard that. And it is the truth. It is the truth that none of our business would be here without God allowing it. It is the truth that everything we do, every single breath, every single story, every single time you go live, every single piece of marketing you put out into the universe, on the internet, on your Instagram, all of it is because the Lord allows it. The Lord can do anything. And I think it serves us as entrepreneurs to remember that we are here to do the will of God in our lives. I think what this does is can help with, again, the natural inclination towards self reliance in entrepreneurs. And this can be something very difficult to unlearn. And I think one of the most important things for an entrepreneur to learn is how to trust God with your business, become docile to the Holy Spirit, and simply just trust Him to take the next right step. Listen to this podcast, and I would be so curious if you develop your own manifesto, so your own statement of phrases based on these frameworks, based on these components, rather, to create the framework of a manifesto. Listen to it, write it down, take a picture, and tag me on Instagram. I would be so curious if this is something that would help you every day. As I mentioned, if you want to see the actual final product of this manifesto, it is going to be revealed inside of my course, The Business Buffet. And you can find out how to join that in the description for this podcast. I think this is such an important habit to develop, because otherwise, our brain can naturally look for the problems. Our brain can naturally go to the habits that we have formed. And this is a way, I think, of invading our thoughts with the truth. And the truth will set us free. All right, friends. Thank you. Very grateful for you. Thank you for listening. If you find this content helpful, will you share it with a friend? Like and subscribe to this on YouTube and send this over wherever you listen on podcasts. Send it to a friend and leave me a review on your favorite podcast app. We'll see you on the next one.